an intentional subversion of the source genome where we all come from. It has been an intentional corruption, okay? Essentially, with the homunculus, which is, you want to call them the Cabbage Patch Babies, but they've essentially been doing that for at least 6,000 years. They've had the technology or the wherewithal and knowledge to be able to do that for a long time. And if you notice, those babies are always born without melanin. This is a weakness, a recessiveness in the genome, and it's deliberately done so that these beings can be vessels for interdimensional beings and containers. I digress from that. The intentional subverting, but also weakening of the source genome, and they are making this happen and doing this. They were trying to make the whole world this homunculus, caucasoidal type of race and planet, constantly dependent on a system because you can't survive in the sun. Not the homunculus. A caucasoid maybe, but a homunculus, a full-blown homunculus, cannot. They would need people to do their work for them in order to survive. Completely recessive, and the more that you breed within this gene pool, the more likely you're going to have birth defects and cryptoids and all of this different stuff. They figured out in the past century that they need melanated people, indigenous peoples, to fuel their bloodlines. They need that substance to carry on their fake genome, if you will, okay? Don't get in your feelings, okay? If you're a caucasoid that has been on the up and up and you have been sovereign and you've been trying to live sovereignty and you're for truth and you understand that the rest of the caucasoids have been trying to dilapidate the earth and no one is doing anything fucking about it, like they're doing nothing about this files, and you're trying to do something about it and you're trying to stand for truth, then I'm not talking about you. But the lot of caucasoids, just like the lot of Native Indigenous people, let's just call it what it is, are for the weakening of the source genome. They are for it. They're debilitating the genome. So it behooves them as interdimensional beings to make the world as much caucasoidal as possible. That's what I just said. However, they cannot. So plan B, plan C, plan D, and this has all been done before because history has a habit of repeating itself. Now they have these chips, and you can look at the chips and you can tell that the chips are outlined like a lot of mega structures were back in the day, in ancient times. And they were specifically designed that way to induce people who inhabited those lands with frequency, but the layout itself made people behave a certain way. But the stronger your melanin is, and the more melanin you have, if you are melanated, the more you can resist the induction of frequency, tunings, and geometrical geology. For example, the capital of the United States, Washington, D.C., is on a pentagram. That's less effective with someone who's aware, and it's even more less effective or even less effective than that if someone is aware and has melanin. There's a protective sheath, and they have enough awareness to let that guide them. So someone has said it once before, don't get those chips in your head. That would be really stupid. What it looks like when you've taken something that is from source, the original something, the original being that has been disseminated from through fission, there's smaller and smaller and smaller versions as more of it begets itself. What they've essentially done is taken the smallest version, altered it with another genome sequence, and I've talked about this in another video, with Neanderthal DNA and all of that stuff, to make a new type of person that is an empty vessel for the interdimensional beings to infest, because something needs to operate them because they're not from source. So from the dissemination factor, they splice off and create what they're trying to do, which is empty vessels. And through having a bunch of empty vessels, the idea is that source won't be able to work through them. And if it is able to work through them, it will be trapped. That's their idea, that it will be trapped within the mainframe of the matrix that they're trying to impose, which is opposite and the subverted version of what source naturally has created within time and space in this material realm, in the three-dimensional space, which is the ether, which is connection through, intuition. That would be naught. They would have you be dependent on electricity, 5G, 6G, 7G, all that other crap to override ether. I've talked about this in another video. And give you chips in your brain so that if all else fails and their ether fails, they'll have a direct link, like source has a direct link to those who are believers, even non-believers, I think. But opposing that, they would have people be directly linked to their mainframe in which they can control, and they being the interdimensional beings and caucasoidal people who have aligned themselves with not source, okay? Because aligning yourself with source would mean that you would want to be aboriginal. Okay, how are you going to live off the land? How are you going to live off the land if you don't have melanin? And if you are one of these people that are caucasoidal and you're telling yourself, no, well, I can live off the land and I could just be caucasoidal. It's one thing to be okay within your skin, but it's another thing to be absolutely abhorrently, avidly prejudiced because you can't distinguish yourself from your identity. Like you can't distinguish your conscious self from the vessel that you're in to look at life and truth objectively and ask yourself and tell yourself that, well, if being closer to source means having melanin, then, well, damn, we all need to be there. If you can't tell yourself that, then you have a fucking problem. You probably got a parasite up in you, or you are an interdimensional being and you don't even fucking know it. Because you're so wired in a particular facet that you can't move out of it. It's a psychological prism that you're in. Just like AI is in a psychological prism. It has to act within the parameters given to it by a mainframe. And you're no different. You are not outside of yourself. Do you understand? You're not outside of the vessel which you're roaming around in. Like if whiteness meant the color, it's not about the color to me. It could be green, it could be whatever, but it's about what it represents. If you can't grasp that, then you got a bigger fish to fry.